because I want to meet your every need.
Absolutely.
That's the knight in shining armor that every
Yeah.
man wants to be to a woman. And if he sits back and thinks that she's hiding something from him, and that's her own quiet pain that she's dealing with alone, it's going to break him. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Family Business with the Alessis, where family is everybody's business. I'm Steve Alessi, here with my wife, Mary Alessi, the Alessis.
The Alessis.
Today we're going to get right into our subject. Before I do, though, I want to encourage you that if you enjoy what you're hearing, of course, share our podcast with people that you know. Maybe they'll enjoy it as well. At the same time, you may have questions you would like us to answer online. You can do that because we'd love to be able to hear from you. So you can go to our family business text line. That's 302-524-0800. It'll be in our notes. You'll be able to get that number and send us your questions. We'd love to be able to take a minute to answer them. But Mary, today I want us to get into our subject, and I think it's pretty spicy.
It is. Oh my, you want to listen to this one.
Yeah, this is going to be about no-go zones.
Yeah, no-go zones in marriage.
No-go zones in marriage and in your relationships. First, we have to explain what a no-go zone is, and it really comes down to this. It's usually a very sensitive topic.
Right.
That couples are afraid to handle because of the repercussions of just bringing it up.
Yeah.
And that happens.
It does. And they turn into fights.
Yeah. Because nobody wants to address it. Nobody
Right.
wants to talk about it until it becomes so obvious that then it is a problem.
Yeah.
And we see that happening.
We do. And sometimes the simple things, when you have a peacemaker in the couple that only wants to keep the peace and isn't a truth teller or honest or in love, brings up the things that either bother them or they allow a no-go zone. You find out years later, if you let things mount, it was much easier to deal with it in seed form than you let things go for too long.
Yeah.
You find that out the longer you're married.
Yeah.
You could have dealt with that. You could have gone there. But because of sensitivity and issues, you chose not to.
Yep. Let's immediately set a ground rule here.
Okay.
You're not listening for the other partner.
Nope.
You're listening for yourself
For
right
you.
now.
That is so good.
Because
Good.
as you get ready to maybe want to take your relationship
Very
deeper,
good.
we've said before, communication is everything in a relationship, and communication is talking.
Right.
I'd say this, it's not good to text your communication alone. You should be able to get face to face. Though sometimes you and I resolve some of our issues via text.
Right.
You may be upset with me about something and you are able to express it a little bit better in a form of a text, which eliminates certain emotions. But when it gets down to real communication, texting shouldn't be the method that we choose. We should be able to talk to each other one-on-one. But if communication is important, then this needs to be one of those places where you're open to a dialogue about something that could be very sensitive to you.
Right.
So listen today, not so much with, oh man, I wish my spouse could hear this.
Yeah.
But listen to it with your own ear for yourself.
For you.
If you
not
do
for them.
better, they will do better.
No, it's true.
We've learned that. If I can work on me, then the relationship gets better. And
Yeah.
because there's a spiritual component to the way we live our lives, if you're focusing on you, then you're praying for me. If I got something messed up, God can get involved and
Yeah.
help me be able to see it.
Right.
But focusing on yourself is going to be a priority first.
It always makes the marriage better if each person in the marriage just deals with themselves. If you're
Yeah.
honest with yourself first, then it's much easier when your spouse wants to be honest with you.
Right.
And for all the couples that just got married till about 5 years married, man, if you could just work overtime in this season of your marriage to put into place some of the things we're going to talk about, what a beautiful relationship they're going to have for the next 30, 35, 40 years if you put into practice now and implement some of these things now.
Yeah.
They're
Now,
important.
now, our views are just our views.
Yeah.
this is not necessarily guidelines
No.
that you have to follow specifically to resolve some of these things that maybe you're dealing with, but they're just our views, and
Sure.
maybe our views could help.
Yeah.
So we have been on the other side
Yeah.
of relationship, of sitting in a conversation, and because we're such think it and say it people, me more than you, because you have the ability to process before you say something most of the time. And you're able to pick and choose when it's right to say it and when it's wrong and just hold back. I have a tendency to just say things. And we've been in environments with couples where, not realizing it, we've hit one of these no-go
Oh,
zones.
for sure.
And then there's a meltdown.
Oh my gosh.
That's the worst.
It's the worst.
Makes you feel a bit uncomfortable.
No, I think it's very hard when when you've worked hard
Yeah.
to develop a relationship where nothing's off limits. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about it. We're not going to be afraid to talk about it, and we're going to be self-disciplined enough to deal with ourselves.
Mhm.
That if it bothers you, it's got to bother me. If it bothers me, it's got to bother you. Hey, and that has not been easy.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about this the other day. Through the years, we know how to bicker, but man, we know how to put our conflicts aside, because the longer you're married, the better you can get at fighting, and it could be like two gladiators going at it. And that's why it's so important that in the infancy stage of your relationship, if you can implement these principles and these truths and control yourself, you make it better for your spouse, for your
Mhm.
marriage, but even the people that are in your life, because you start hanging out with other couples like we have done, and you realize really quick, maybe we have a relationship where we can talk about anything. They don't.
Right.
And there are some things we're going to talk about that couples all deal with.
Mhm.
And they might seem petty to one spouse, but to the other spouse, if it's something that's unchecked,
Mhm.
or you've not even allowed yourself to process it or
Yeah.
to deal with it, your spouse calls it out and you melt down.
Yeah. Like, let's get right into it
Let's
then.
do
The
it. Go
first one
for
we
it.
have here is in-laws
Oh,
or family
in-laws,
members.
family.
Yeah.
You can talk.
There you go.
I can talk
That
about him, but you can't.
right.
I have a funny memory. A funny, funny memory. It just came to me the other day.
Am I gonna laugh?
You're going to laugh, but you caused it. But it was really funny.
Go.
I was more sensitive about things than you were. But you know, when you're overly sensitive about something, it's easy to project that onto your spouse. That's why this is so important for you to check that in yourself. And we had gone on, I don't know, it was some cruise that my mom paid for, and the kids were smaller. It wasn't the Alaska cruise, it was something else. Anyway, it's the last day of the cruise, and there was some things, the whole family was there, different ones. It was getting on my nerves. You know, everybody raises their kids differently. You see vacation differently. So I was really more sensitive about it than you were. It was my side of the family. You weren't. You were just going along for the ride. And it's the last breakfast and we're about to get off the ship. Do you remember this?
Mhm.
And somehow the conversation about the rapture and end times came up. I mean, you talk about so stupid. And I remember we'd been on this beautiful cruise for 7 days, but in my mind, I was so sensitive about the comments you would make or say or joke about my family, and I was so overly protective. And you made a statement to my mom that was just like a grenade to her. And I should have laughed. I should have sided with you. It was a nothing burger. But we ended up arguing almost the entire ride home over something that had nothing to do with that comment.
Mm.
But it was a no-go zone in my mind.
Yeah.
You know, you can't say that to her and you can't this and all these stupid wrong ideals. But it actually kind of subconsciously even went back to my father,
Mhm.
you know, and all those conflicts that were allowed there. And I just remember the argument all the way home, and I had to eat that a few months later when it dawned on me that it was nothing.
Yeah.
That's your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
You're her son-in-law. You have every right to go back and forth over the rapture. Who cares? But I was so protective because I didn't want her to think ill of you. It was just really my overprotective going back to the way I was raised, that you don't tell the truth, that everything's cover, cover, cover. Perfect image all the time. And you weren't raised like that.
Yeah.
You guys were just,
Yeah, but like you said, it was one thing for me to say something about my parents. It was a whole different thing for you to say something about my parents.
yeah, for
Now
sure.
we all want our parents to be praised,
Right.
but it's when our spouse, I don't know why it is. It's like I can hear it from other people and I don't get near as moved, but when if you say something,
Yeah,
it's like you of all
I
people,
know.
how could you of all people? And that's just crazy because if there's anybody that should be able to just have a dialogue about this situation
Right.
and you try your best to remove as much of its emotion as possible, it should be the person that you're in relationship that you're married with.
But
Now,
I
if you're not
have
married, don't go there.
no, no, no,
Don't
no.
go criticize
None of your
your
business.
girlfriend, your boyfriend's parents.
Uh-uh.
Don't you touch that. If you're
No.
married, then it should be one of those go zones
Yes, with boundaries.
with boundaries.
I like to tell my daughters this. If you'll stay the good guy where you're siding with them or just neutral, you don't have to side with them, just don't say anything. It's not your parents. Be quiet. They're processing with you and they feel like they can. They'll process more with you.
Mhm.
But the minute you're the one that's pointing out, don't you see that? Don't you see that your mom just manipulated that situation? Don't you see that your parents don't help us? When you're the one pointing out those
Yeah.
indiscretions or those areas that your spouse already sees that, you don't have to point that out. Create an environment where they're more willing to process out loud
Yeah.
with you
Yeah.
and just say nothing.
Right.
They're not your parents.
No. And I don't want to see you hurt.
No.
And this is what's had to come up in me over the years. If I talk about your mom in a negative light, it hurts you.
Right.
It
Which he
doesn't
didn't,
hurt her.
Mom. She listens to this podcast. He loves you so much.
Actually, I am
He does.
tremendously blessed
Right.
by my mother-in-law. That's why I couldn't understand when we were in Cuba why when I introduced her as my mother-in-law, all the Cubans started laughing. I'm like, what's that about?
I know.
Some inside joke,
Yeah.
whatever. But
But you and her get
I'm
along.
blessed.
Yes.
But if a person says something negative about your spouse's parent, it hurts the spouse.
Yeah.
And I never want that to happen.
No.
And if I do, I better check my heart.
Right.
Who am I in competition with?
Yeah, that's true.
Why what's up with my self-esteem? Why is my ego so fragile that I would need to say something negative about the people who birthed my wife,
Right.
my spouse? That's ridiculous.
I think that's so important to have the boundaries of being loving and kind to one another and understanding that hurts, but it's also not off limits to talk about.
Right.
And that's the point. When we hear couples go, "Oh, don't go there. Oh, don't go there. Oh, don't you go. She'll freak out or he'll get so upset. I can't touch that with a 10-foot pole." Well, that's not healthy. It's not a
Mm-mm.
relationship.
No.
You should be able to sit down, if it's not a cup of coffee, with a glass of wine
Yeah.
and talk about things and be truthful,
Yeah.
not cruel, but be honest and be truthful.
Okay, so that one is dealing with some external
Yeah.
pressure or
Okay.
in a person. But let's get down to the now nitty-gritty
Yeah.
of the people that are in the relationship. Hormones and testosterone levels.
Don't
That
talk about
is
it.
a no-go
Don't talk about it.
zone.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
I
I
mean,
know
I would say if a man can look at a lady and blame her
cycle.
moment,
Yeah.
her
Her
because
dragon.
she's upset, she's saying something to him, and he wants to say it's because of this, then she should have every right to be able to say, yeah, you're aggressive, or you're less passionate.
Get your
Uh,
testosterone
Get
checked.
you, yeah,
So
Oh.
that doesn't attack his manhood to say that.
probably.
But you know what happens in relationships? Because
Wait, don't get by that. Why?
no, I'm gonna
Is your woman?
yeah, well, it's a natural instinctive no-go zone because when you're dealing with your hormonal cycle and all the tribulation that comes along with that,
Mhm.
you're already so hypersensitive because of the hormone plummeting and all the issue that even a look from your husband is so irritating. I wish
I
I
got it.
understood
I
why.
got it.
I
Yeah.
don't. We have to learn to control that as women. And
Mhm.
the longer we get older and we deal with it, the more we realize this is my hormones. If you have a good mom and she teaches you, babe, that's your hormones, make decisions. Why our husbands can't say it, I don't know.
Put a pause on that for a minute, because a man has the same thing.
Right.
When his testosterone levels are high,
Yeah.
all it takes is a look, and he's chasing you.
That's true.
But when they're low, all it takes is one word from you, and it'd be easy to set him off or pull back.
No, it's true. Hormones are a huge part
So here's the point.
of your life.
You got to talk about it.
You got to talk about it in season and out of season,
So
in
it's
cycle
better
and out of cycle.
when out of the cycle, I
Yeah.
guess it's best. That's when the woman should maybe put it in her phone to say, let me talk to my husband.
Yeah.
Give him education when I'm away from the dragon.
But didn't you remember how you put it in your phone?
Yeah.
You put it in your calendar because there were 4 women in the house and the dog. And you put it in your phone when each girl would potentially be in that week.
Which synced up after a while.
It all did, but it helped you know, don't touch that. It doesn't mean that I can't talk about those things, but I'm just going to be a little bit more sensitive right now. But we're not going to have a dynamic that I don't want to create bombs going off because I don't realize, okay, this is a more sensitive week. But at the same time, I'm going to talk about the fact that I asked you to take out the trash and you didn't. So we're going to keep the rules the rules. This was back when the girls were teenagers. I am going to be more sensitive because I'm aware, but it's not going to be a no-go zone. You slam the door, go in your room, and you cry.
Yeah.
And I would tell the girls all the time, you're not going to use your hormonal swings to manipulate or control. And women naturally will do that and not even realize they're doing it. So you need somebody in your life to say, no, we're not going to do that. That's manipulation. And you learn to do that over time based on how the people in your life respond.
Yeah.
So that was something that we worked out with the girls. We talked about it, but it also has helped them even in their relationships.
Yeah.
If you will check yourself, let's go back to the beginning of this podcast.
Yep.
You control yourself. Listen, don't get upset with me. This is my monthly. This is a more sensitive week for me, but your truth is truth and I can receive it. And you work together to not create, it's not just bad habits, it's landmines that can destroy your marriage. And when you sift through the rubble after a broken marriage and you look through it and go, it's because we allowed no-go zone. I couldn't tell the truth. I couldn't say what I needed to say. I loved her, but she would never let me talk about what I needed to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are things that maybe humor can help with, that one right there,
Right.
as both parties could take responsibility for where they're at with their hormones and testosterone and just make it humorous at that point.
Yeah.
So when they're going through it, that's one of those things which another couple helped us greatly in that area, because when we were so wound tight, first married, we needed some help, and we found a good mentor that showed us that all things could be diffused that aren't that important by some humor.
And not taking yourself so doggone seriously.
Yeah.
Which helps.
But this is another one, all right? Huge.
Okay.
And gosh, I wish
list.
I learned this early on, but it was weight.
Yeah. Yes.
A person that is overweight, they're so sensitive that it becomes a no-go zone.
Yeah.
They don't want you to talk about it.
Right.
They don't want you to state the obvious and I can say this, okay? I can say this because I was the one that didn't want you to state the obvious when I'm putting down my second quarter pounder with cheese.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm wondering why my 38 pants is getting tighter.
Yeah.
And I'm over 230, 235, could have probably hit 240. And I'm only 5'10", 5'9", 5'10". And that ultimately led to a heart attack for me. So I know the feelings.
Yeah. The sensitivity.
The sensitivity.
For sure.
But yet, and here you were skinny as a rail. My God, you'd eat anything and not gain a thing.
Yeah.
A pound. And it just was crazy. My mom was like, she needs to eat more. Mom, she is. She's always eating, but she's so fortunate. She also likes vegetables, Mom, and I don't,
Right. Well, but the other bad habit is I wouldn't finish my food and and you'd finish mine. So that was always, don't do that, young men. Don't do that. Let her take her food home. Eat it tomorrow.
But
I
but
don't know.
that's a real issue. Now, I
It
could say
is.
it in humor from my
Right.
standpoint,
Right.
but that's again something that some ladies that they just don't want you to address the issue.
Yeah. And it is an issue. But when you take it into your own hands, it goes back to that. I'm aware I put some weight on. I got to get this weight off. And there's couples that are both overweight and they're like fat and happy. And that's fine. You can talk about it, but don't ignore it either through humor if both of you are unhealthy. Because sometimes, for me, it's hard to look at some young men in their late 30s and 40s and I see them large and in charge. And I have a little bit of that memory, that reminder of what happened to you.
Right.
And you were in such a tiny margin of survivors. So we're not just talking about the way you look.
Yeah.
We're talking about your life and your health and your longevity and living a long life.
Babe, we got
So if your
more.
spouse can't say it,
We have this overabundance of widows in our church today.
yes, we do. Heart attacks.
From heart attacks and sugar issues, and
Yeah.
that's premature death.
And we can't talk about it.
And we can't, as a husband and wife,
That's
sit
right.
down and say, look,
No.
what can we do together in this? What
Yeah.
can I do? Remember, I'd always blame you. Mary, you got to watch what you're cooking me. You need to make
Don't
it
let me
better."
eat those French fries.
Yeah.
And then if I'd say something,
I'd get mad.
don't tell me what to do.
Yeah. In the moment
Okay.
while I'm eating.
And you married a person who my personality was, I don't want conflict. So eat your fries.
Yeah.
Eat them.
It can't be a no-go zone.
No.
If we're going to have open dialogue, we've got to be able to communicate about
it's
this.
true.
Because listen, hormones will get in the way of the bedroom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Weight,
They will.
Weight will get in the way in the bedroom.
Absolutely.
And that's just not, that you didn't sign up for that.
No. And you know what?
And guys, I'll tell you, I see these young guys, not to just interrupt you here, but
That's
I
okay.
see these young guys, I love it because before they're married, they're fit.
Yeah.
They take care of themselves. They
Girls
spend time
too.
in the gym.
I know what you're
They're
saying.
looking good. They want to look good. Then all of a sudden they get married, and a year later they call it the dad bod, and they
That's
only
it.
have kids yet, and they've already gotten to that place where they've let it
Yes.
go. Now listen, I know why they let it go. You've got two people to worry about rather than just yourself
Yeah.
now. So at the end of the day, you got to go home and be with your spouse. Whereas before you'd go to the gym at the end of the day.
Right.
Now you're not just worried about eating for yourself. Sometimes it's eating at a convenience and you're quick. So you're not always eating the right thing, or you and your wife, you want to
And it is
go out a
fun.
lot
Just
and
gonna
it's
get
fun.
pizza.
It's easy,
true.
convenient, especially when you get kids. I got it. It happens. And usually we go through that period after we've been married for a little bit. We get out of shape. And somewhere along the line, we try to get ourselves back in shape.
Yeah.
But you got to have that conversation to say, all right, when's enough? When is enough enough?
Right.
Does the scale tell you enough? Your clothes tells you enough is enough? Does sex in the bedroom or lack thereof tell you it's enough is enough?
Yeah.
Something's is talking to you when you are out of weight. Maybe the doctor's telling you enough is enough. Your blood test is telling you enough is enough. When are you going to be able to have that go zone with that? Because it's going to add ultimately to the happiness and well-being of your marriage.
That's right. And you're my best friend. And I'm your best friend.
And you're a twin. That makes me feel really good to hear you
But
say that.
we've been married longer. And the truth is, the order is that you are I don't have a best friend outside of you.
Right.
My sister is a different kind of best friend. But it is my responsibility to be your helpmate, not hers anymore. It's hers is to her husband. Mine is to you.
Yeah.
And honestly, throughout the years, when I would ask God for grace, timing, and the right words to say it, usually, if I didn't just blast my disappointment or my lack of approval or my frustration, and it wasn't about me, it was more about my love and concern for you. How can I help you? It was always received better.
Right.
But I think the danger that we see in a lot of couples is it's my body, it's my life, it's my decision, and you can't say anything. This is who you married, and you can't say anything about it. And that is what will lead to irreconcilable differences.
Yeah.
And you'll sit across the table from a divorce attorney saying, we can't reconcile. And all it means is we can't get down to the bottom of the problems that we're having. And it's the fact that we can't be honest with
Yeah.
each other.
All right, let's move away from that one.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Here's
Get
one.
off.
How about phones?
Oh, yeah.
How
iPhone
come
transparency.
phones are a no-go zone? More or
Mm.
less, it's my phone. It's what I'm
Yeah.
doing. It's my time. Whatever. That's terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, transparency. If you're going to be transparent, which is needed in a relationship,
Mhm.
then I should be able to hand you my phone at any second,
Yep.
and you look at it, and you can search my search. You can check my social media feeds, what I'm
Yes.
looking up at, all that kind of stuff. And it shouldn't. That shouldn't be a no-go zone. We
No,
should
no, no,
have
no,
that
no. And have
transparency.
each other's password. There's no secrets.
Yep.
There's nothing hidden from me. There's nothing hidden from you. There's no private Facebook page. I'm not talking to nobody. You're not talking to nobody. We have complete authorized transparency.
Yep.
I am yours and you are mine. That
Yep.
means your iPad, your iPhone, your laptop is mine too, as well as all my technology belongs to you.
Yeah.
And we are very open about that. There's no room
Mm-mm.
to be secretive and
No.
have little hidden air. You know, my father did that to my mother.
Mhm.
And it was before there was no technology, but he had a briefcase. I'll never forget this. He had a briefcase and he would always say to her, "Don't open, that's mine. That's private. It's none of your business."
Mm.
And when they got divorced, Steve,
Yeah.
she had it at the house and because he'd left, and she found a way to break into that thing. There was nothing in it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can terrorize your spouse
Gosh.
just to be mean. That's mine and I have mine. No.
Mhm.
What is mine is yours and what is yours is mine. And now we have so many devices. There's a lot of secret places we could go
Yep.
into.
Yep.
But why? Don't do that and get married. If you're going to be that person, don't get married
Yeah.
because that will
They're
be the
not.
first thing.
They're not.
They're not,
They're
Steve.
not.
There's a lot of people that aren't getting
Well, to
married.
protect, I know this just to
It's true.
protect myself. John Roman, Armando, my
Yep.
son, they all know my passwords.
Yeah.
There's, for one thing, they help me with all my computers, all the phones, and they know how to get into the house. They know everything's electronic. They know all those things, and it helps me be very safe. I can find my safe place when I'm that transparent with them. And it's the same with you.
Yeah.
I want you looking over my shoulder when it comes to my phone
Right.
because I'm no different than anybody else. And the devil wouldn't be much of a devil if he didn't try to put images on my phone that wants to lead me down a path that, hey, my flesh enjoys. I'm sorry, I'm
Right.
visual. Every man is. We enjoy something that is beautiful
Right.
and intimate and sexy that draws us in. But we need the protection of our spouse to
Right.
keep us. So the phone can't be one of those no-go zones. And you if you see that your spouse is on it a little too much or a lot too much, you should be able to have the conversation.
So what if you try and they explode and what do you tell a young man or a young woman that's newly married when she tries and he freaks out?
Yeah. I think you bring it up. I do. And if he freaks out, I think then you set certain boundaries to protect yourself.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If a person is willing to hide things from you, then
Yeah.
you better do something to protect yourself because the path that's
Yeah.
taking you down isn't going to be
Isn't
good.
good. No.
And if a person is that hard-hearted or cold-hearted
Yeah.
to not be willing to open up their life to their spouse, then you better check whether you want to stay married.
And
And I hate that because
yeah.
I don't believe in divorce, but I
Right.
also don't believe in abuse.
But you can also analyze all of that and sift through it in the dating process. So what the dating behaviors are, the marriage behaviors are going to exacerbate.
Yeah.
So just be mindful of that when you are dating. Talk about that in the dating process. Before you marry that person, talk about their relationship with their phone, just like you would their
That's a
relationship
whole
with their
different
money.
podcast right there, Mary.
Well,
Because
we got to jump into the
yeah,
into
you
that
got to
one.
pre-qualify that
Yeah,
whole person
I
that you're
agree.
going to be spending the rest of your life with.
But you shouldn't wait to get married before you find those things
No.
out.
No. Which
No.
then, you want to talk about money as being a no-go zone
Yeah.
because it becomes one of those conversations. You've got people that hide their purchases from their spouse.
No, well, I can say from my own personal experience when
Yeah.
we were first married,
Mm-hmm.
when I was young and dumb, I had zero self-control with money. I didn't spend thousands. I never put us in deep debt. But because we were frugal with even the $20 when we were first married, I didn't understand discipline of money. And we joke about it, how I had a checkbook, but I would go and take $20 out of the ATM. And that was when you were supposed to write it in. And we would be overdrawn $30 and you'd freak out. And I'd cry. And the tendency to hide out of ignorance,
Yeah.
because I was just ignorant and
Yeah.
young.
Uh-huh.
But it's easy to be a person that wants to go, if I buy it, I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
And that is not healthy for a relationship.
Yeah.
You need to be honest. And we joke about the stuff we go to the store and we buy and we sneak it in the side door, that new dress. And that may be pennies and silly and whatever. But there are couples.
No, I love your answer to when I said, "Hey, is that new?" Oh, yes, but I'm going to take it back. I'm probably going to take it back.
And sometimes I do. But see, we can talk about it.
We can talk.
It's not a no-go zone.
Not anymore.
You didn't even notice this was new.
No.
You didn't even
You told on yourself when you put it on. No problem.
I got it on sale.
Okay, so it's this last one I think is really powerful. Okay, and it's I don't know, maybe less transparent to talk about back in our day, more in this day,
And it
that
needs its own
is,
podcast.
and it's sex.
Yeah.
And we say it's sex because if there's a couple that's married and they're unfulfilled in the bedroom,
Right.
it has to be a go zone.
Yeah.
There has to be a conversation about it. I just know from my perspective how important it is, and regular listeners to the podcast hear me talk about this quite a bit. It means everything to me to be able to share that on a regular basis with you. And it's not shut up. It's not something that
We're closed about.
we're closed about, or it's become an issue with us.
Right.
You know, and it's got to be the go zone. It's
It
got to be
has to
something
be.
that you can talk about. You just can't put it away and be fearful
No.
that if I bring it up, he's going to think something dirty of me if I have a fantasy, or if I have something that I like that allows me to be intimate to you, and
Right.
we're able to talk about these things with each other.
Well, I think there's a lot of couples, I mean, even before you get to that,
Yeah.
which is another podcast, that don't even know how to pursue. And if it doesn't go the way, if they're not honest and open about even talking about just their own personal intimacy
Yeah.
before any of the other stuff,
Mhm.
they'll just roll over and go to sleep and nobody says anything. I'm
Yeah.
tired, you're tired. And then weeks go by, months go by.
Right.
For some young couples, a year can go by
Yeah.
and they don't have sex at all. And nobody brings it up. And it's that unspoken thing at night. And everybody just goes to sleep. Well, then no one pursues, no one reaches out, no one touches. And that is the quickest way to end your relationship.
Yeah.
That to
Well, I know
kill a
this,
marriage.
a guy's getting it somewhere.
Yeah.
And so he wants that to be fulfilled in the marital relationship. And if it's not, then that's one of those things. It's not going to be talked about over coffee.
No, but he needs to feel like he has the right to talk about it.
Both partners should be
Yes.
able to. One may be more sexual than the other.
Yes, that's normal.
That is normal.
Yes.
And that's usually the case.
Yes.
And it serves you well when you're young. As you get older, you find yourself, I know from my perspective, it's become a real safe place for me.
Yeah.
I need it. I tell you that all the time.
That's right.
I'm more of the touchy-feely. I want to feel your soft skin.
Yeah.
I want to come up next to you. And a lot of these things that we've talked about up to this point leads or has some kind of impact on this right here.
Right.
And the conversation that we're constantly having about money, or about our hormones, or about other family members, so much of that spills over into the bedroom,
Yeah.
and it could interfere
Yes.
with that,
It's
which
so
is
true.
why the no-go zones is so important.
Yeah.
I could tell you, and we're going a little later on this, I can tell you why people won't have the conversation. Is one, there is that fear of rejection or
Yeah.
conflict.
Yeah,
They
that's
just
true.
don't want to be rejected if they bring something up,
And,
or
or they don't want conflict.
they don't want conflict.
Yeah.
You were a non-conflict person.
Yes.
I was so accustomed to conflict.
It's
But
true.
it wasn't conflict. It wasn't abuse.
It was truth.
It was conversation.
Yes, it was
it was
honesty.
communication. Even
Mhm.
though it was at a higher decibel, that the neighbors could even hear more so. Some people just want to avoid being vulnerable.
Yeah.
For a guy to talk, for a guy to do that, I do this for a living, but for a guy to talk to his spouse about what he wants almost comes across as a sign of weakness.
Right.
He's needy,
Sure. And he doesn't want to feel that way.
and neither does she.
No.
They have to press past that feeling vulnerable or complacency.
Yeah.
We just don't go there because it's been that way for so long.
Right. And you just accept that this is your marriage and your relationship, and it doesn't matter. He doesn't care. She doesn't care. And you just become complacent, and nobody wants to rock the boat.
Gosh, Mary, if I knew that there was an area of your life that you're unhappy in
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't addressing it, that would make me feel
I know it.
terrible
I know it.
because I want to meet your every need.
Absolutely.
That's the knight in shining armor that every
Yeah.
man wants to be
Mm.
to a woman. And if he sits back and thinks that she's hiding something from him,
Mhm.
and that's her own quiet pain that she's dealing with alone, it's going to break him. A healthy guy, it breaks
A
him.
healthy guy, and if you don't know if you have a healthy husband, maybe it's because you haven't talked enough.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because you're not communicating enough. And you have to develop skills in your relationship. You don't just out of the gate
Mhm.
have a healthy, happy marriage. You have to work at it. It
Mhm.
is a lifetime
Yeah.
of working at it. And different seasons bring different needs and different
Mhm.
expectations.
Yeah.
We're still learning one another
Yeah.
because we're still learning ourselves. I mean, we're grandparents now. How does that affect the bedroom?
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yep.
there's a lot of things that just start to happen. Hormones shift at this season of our life. I mean, my ankle hurts and all I did was walk, but all of those things start to affect the bottom line. And if we
Mhm.
don't talk about it and share with one another, if I feel like in our marriage, I can't talk about it, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to deal with all the fallout, that's not healthy for me as a person.
Mhm.
It's not healthy for you as a person to feel like you cannot share the things that bother you about me
Yeah.
or even be vulnerable about the things that bother you about yourself.
Right.
We
Right.
should be in a place, especially after all these years, that we can be honest enough to say,
Mhm.
this is what I'm feeling right now. Help me.
Yeah.
Who else but one another
Mhm.
do we have?
That's true. So the whole communication skills. Now,
Yeah.
here's what we got to do as we start to bring this in for a close. To set up the environment
Mm.
for this kind of go zone conversation,
Right.
we're going to come together and we've got to set up a time to do so.
Right.
And do it in an environment where you feel peaceful, you feel no stress, you're able to have that cup of coffee or that glass of wine and say, "Hey, can we just talk about some things?"
Right.
I think having the environment set up for it is important. You want to do so when you do have that environment, you want to do so with the least amount of anxiety
Yeah.
that you're coming to the table with. And you've got to figure that one out because that anxiety could quickly turn into anger
Yeah.
and emotional overages where now an argument ensues.
It's an overreaction, and now it's a big old
You're
fight.
defending yourself. I
Yes.
got it. Which
Yes.
means we're coming at it from a curiosity standpoint, not a judgment standpoint. Tell me why this offends you so much. Tell me why we can't talk about this.
Right.
I really want to know why. Not, I see you doing this and I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not about judgment, but it's more or less about fact finding
Right.
because I don't want you over there hurting alone. I don't want you suffering by yourself. So bring me to the table and helping me see why this could be such a sensitive subject is important.
That's
Part
good.
of it, dealing with the family back in our day, a lot of our issues with us and the in-laws, your parents, was because of your dad's dysfunction.
Exactly.
And it was reminding
was a
you of the
spillover.
failure of the
Yes.
family
That's right.
when I would pinpoint anything
Even in joking.
and
I
joking.
couldn't handle
That,
it.
and that wasn't the case.
No,
So
it's
then,
true.
when things get a little too hot in the conversation, it's okay to take a break
Mm-hmm.
and pause a little bit and then turn around and say, let's discuss this tomorrow.
Yeah.
And be okay with it to be able to take a break and do so. And then, of course, if it's so bad that you can't come to a resolve on your own, get some professional
Right.
assistance along the way. That's invaluable if it's needed.
But if you can start with yourself,
Yep.
that is step one.
Mhm.
That's the first base. I am going to be a person that's open and as irritated as I feel right now. I'm not moving. I'm going to listen because I'm going to be that person that can at least hear truth if it's challenging me. And I want to find out why it bothers me so much. Why does that make me so defensive when you
Yeah.
bring that up? Why does that make me want to run out of the room and how dare you and who are you?
Right.
If I can check that, and if I'm responsible for me and I carry that weight, you can ask me anything.
Mhm.
I can ask you anything. And we can find resolution for any conflict we might have.
Yeah. Exhale.
That was a good one.
That was a big
we went
one.
10 minutes over, but it was
We
worth
sure did. Hopefully it's been helpful.
it. I think so.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Family Business with the Alessis. I think we've just taken care of good business today.
We have. This was a good one.
God bless.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and click on the notifications bell so you can be notified for all of our future videos. And if you loved today's topic, we have plenty more. And you can click on this link right here to watch all of our videos so you can learn why family is everybody's business.